You write, in California, the ongoing mega drought is already responsible for having killed 12.5 million trees in that state's national forests, according to scientists with the U.S. Forest Service. The scientists expect the die-off to continue. Recent research out of California also shows that forests there have actually become climate polluters rather than carbon dioxide reducers, again due to ACD impacts. The study shows that greenhouse gases are billowing out of the state's forests faster than they are being sucked back in, with ACD-amplified wildfires mostly to blame. How did trees become climate change causers like the right has always said they were? Wasn't it the agriculture secretary under Reagan, James Watt, who said that trees actually produced more climate change gases than they sucked in? Wasn't that part of the controversy at the time?
Yeah, see, James Watt was right, Chuck. We've been wrong all along. They're not trees; they're actually smokestacks disguised as something, like pacifist and nice-looking and smelling like a tree. Yeah, so actually, we need to burn them all. Droughts are good. Chop them all down, log it all, and pave it, and then we'll be better off.
Oh, those deep pockets of the timbering industry have got to you, haven't they, Dahr?
Well, I live in Washington State, so yeah,
So how did this happen? How did this switch happen?
Well, basically what it is simply is as outlined in the piece, but because of the drought, all the forests are drying up, and wildfires are so out of control at this point that they're burning. And so, normally, the whole Plant a Tree campaign, everyone's heard of this, and it's kind of the one of the starting campaigns of the green movement is if we plant more trees and protect more, conserve more wild areas, because they absorb carbon and they produce oxygen, and so they are really the frontline defense against climate change and CO2 emissions in the atmosphere, because they literally will remove it, they will sequester it naturally, as well as producing oxygen and cleaning the air. But then when you introduce massive chronic sustained drought, like in California and like in a lot of the rest of the Southwest, in fact, NASA predicts that the entire southwestern U.S. has already entered a mega drought, literally something that's going to go on for decades, not just a 1 or 2 year typical drought, but we're looking at mega drought. We're looking at the Colorado River drying up. We're looking at major reservoirs across the Southwest at at record low levels of how much water they contain. And so the droughts persist. They're chronic. Wildfire season, of course, goes out of control naturally. It doesn't take a genius to figure this stuff out. A school kid could see, well, here's what happened. When you take away all the water, everything dries up and it burns instead of absorbing CO2. When they burn up, they release all the carbon they had stored plus their own carbon, and so that's how they become producers of CO2 instead of sequestering it.
So droughts and fires, those should be our harbingers of things to come. Those should be our harbingers of climate change, not hurricanes and tornadoes, right? Because that's the way that the media seems to be framing this is, and whenever there's a hurricane, they ask, is this caused by climate change? Whenever there's a really drastic tornado, like hit Moore, Oklahoma last year, there'll be some discussion, not a lot, but there'll be some discussion of, was this caused by climate change? Should our real focus as far as symptoms of climate change be droughts and fires, not hurricanes and tornadoes?
No, I think it's all the above, but we have to be careful because we can't attribute any one single event to climate change. You just can't. It's scientifically impossible because, droughts, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, all these extreme weather events always happen and always will, even if there was no climate disruption. And so, but what we look at is the frequency and the intensity of these events. And how are they anomalous to record keeping? Like, are we having 20 hurricanes instead of, traditionally we've always averaged 10 a year? Is it opposite? Are we having like none? Is temperature across the water is equalizing to a point where we're having almost none, and then every once in a while we have like a category 5. I mean, just really anything that is pretty far outside of record keeping. The temperature records that keep getting broken, the intensity of the storms. Like I mentioned, the snowstorm in Buffalo last winter, and I think that's going to become more the norm for the entire Northeast. If you look at climate modeling and how, what's the changes in the Arctic that are happening, and that's having global implications on weather patterns. And so it's really the anomalies that we look for, the records, the storms that just come through and they're just so far off the charts. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we look at and say, okay, that's not necessarily caused only by climate disruption, but it's certainly being amplified by it.